And just in case you just join us, we've just been now officially been announcing that Donald Trump is the new president of the United States of America. But what really also does it mean for many of the demographics, the sectional population of the United States of America, particularly the Hispanics, the black sectional populations in the United States of America? We also have the Orientals and those who are coming from the other sections of the world, and how that is going to have a reflection on the global perception about America and its relationship with the rest of the world. And Evans Mensah again will be joining us. He's a correspondent that is monitoring and supervising a team of reporters and crew that we have in the United States of America. And Evans Mensah is joining me once again. Evans, now particularly where you are, what has been the atmosphere and what has been the general feeling around the United States of America, particularly following the now annexation of the whole seat by the man himself, Donald Trump?
Well, that depends on where you stand. If you are a Republican, you'd be absolutely excited by what has happened. But but if you are a Democrat, this will fill you with a bit of trepidation as far as this is concerned. So for the Republicans, this is huge for them, and they're celebrating this across the country. If you were a Democrat, this is terrible. And I must tell you a story. I was at the Democratic office just when the polls and just when it became clear that Donald Trump was going to win, and I could see people crying, tears on their faces, drenching their faces and drenching their shirts and their dresses, and they were inconsolable. One of them happens to be a friend of mine who I've grown to know, because obviously I've been trying to build sources there, and I was put in this uncomfortable position where you have to try and comfort them, and nothing you could say to them at the moment will help them to appreciate, to come out of that mood of sadness and sorrow. And quickly, the Democratic Party office, they had to close down, lock up the places, and go back home. In contrast, though, you go to the Republican offices, and there was jubilation. They were excited, super excited. They were drinking beer. They were inviting me to come to their homes for lunch, for dinner. And a lot of them were saying, listen, we are taking America back. We are now going to assert our authority back in the world. We are going to show the world that we are strong again. Of course, you're going to we're repeating Donald Trump's mantra. We're going to make America great again. America is for America. And those were the sentiments you hear among the Republicans who've won. The reaction has been mixed. But I must tell you, there's a huge cloud of uncertainty now over this country, this great country, because of this victory. Even the Republicans. I was at the Republican head office earlier in the night when the first few states were coming in. Even the Republicans I spoke to were not confident that they were going to win this. In fact, one of them, who happens to be an organizer, a leading figure for Donald Trump and the Republicans in this part of the United States of America, told me that yes, although they were winning the few first early results, they were not confident they were going to win. And so even for the Republicans, they didn't anticipate this. And so it's going to be a few days here. People need to come to this reality, and let's see where America goes from here. But it's going to be a pretty tough few days for the Republicans. And as we now know, Hillary Clinton will not be speaking today. We don't know when he'll be speaking. Normally, the person who loses, well, she's called Donald Trump already and congratulated him. And normally you will see her now mount a stage, speak to her followers, those who are hurting, like this woman who was crying, speak to them and give them hope and speak some words of encouragement to them, don't give up, etc. But she's not going to speak tonight. That tells you how deep this wound has cut as far as the Democrats are concerned. But for the Republicans, they are in ninth heaven.
And you said there was huge uncertainty in the country, but How does that also dovetail to the fact that the analysis out there, especially on international media, is that there is some relative polarization of the country as far as the demographics are?
Well, polarization, yes. I mean, Trump had run a campaign of division. I mean, he had said from the start, he had targeted immigrants. We all remember he launched his campaign by describing Mexican immigrants as rapists and armed robbers and drug addicts, etc., etc. So that is who he is. That is what he had run his campaign on division. And so that is what has left this country divided. But if you listen to his victory speech, he's sounding a bit more presidential. And he started by saying that he want to be president for all. He's reaching out to everybody else that had even opposed him to come and help him build the country. Those words are words that are healing. America needs to begin the healing process, and he himself needs to begin that process because he had led this great country to this point. A lot of the things he said had divided the country so deeply. But tonight he started that process. He started that process by sounding magnanimous even in victory. And so, of course, as far as the demographics are concerned, if you are an African American living in the United States, this will be worrying for you. But I must tell you something. We will begin shortly, and I'm pretty sure in this conversation we might get there, to start unpacking the reasons why Hillary lost. And when we come to that, very interesting reasons will emerge. And that points to something that we'll talk about very, very, very strongly in the coming days. That's some of the reasons why she lost it.
Ask you about some of the variations in the opinion polls, which for, I believe, second or third time in the history of presidential polls of the United States didn't seem to have gone according to the norm. Why was that relatively?
Well, nobody can tell, and I said it on radio a while ago that I really don't care who you are, whether you are the most experienced political analyst, whether you're the most experienced pollster, whether you've been in politics for centuries. Nobody could put a finger on why the polls were wrong, because the polls in the United States of America have been spot on most of the time. So apart from the 2000 elections, which for obvious reasons pose a challenge, it's been pretty accurate. And so it is difficult for me to sit and pretend I know why the polls got it wrong. But what can be said is Trump is a phenomenon that the world never seen before. And when you have something that is nobody has seen and novel, it defies logic, defies explanation, defies reasoning, defies scientific to explain what.
Well, we seem to have been having a very bad connection there. But I've also been joined by George Wiafe. And George is here to give us a lot more perspectives as to how the markets have been responding to that reality. Now, Donald Trump is going to be the president of the United States of America. How have the markets been reacting, George?
It hasn't been good. The markets have all tumbled. The major markets in Asia, in US itself, the dollar is also going down as well, and other markets in Europe. And basically, it's about the fear of uncertainty, the unknown. And when it comes to finance, what people do not like is about the unknown. Because these fund managers are managing trillions of dollars, millions of dollars. And if there's any a little indication that they don't know what would happen in terms of America's economic direction, in terms of whether he's going to continue with the programs of the Obama government, because you could see that growth was picking up, job numbers were picking up. So if I'm not sure how things will go, then what I have to do is to withdraw these funds in the stock market and then put it in what they'll call the safe haven assets like gold. So you are seeing that happen. Drawing down to developing economies like Ghana and even in Africa, it's a mixed situation as we speak, and even a mixed blessing, some might say. Because if some of these fund managers are pulling their funds out of the stock market, the safest place to put these funds are in gold assets. And we produce and export gold, so that might be good to us. Also, the dollar is not doing very well, and you know that this is more of a dollarized economy. So if the dollar is not doing well, what will be the implication of that for our local currency? So it's all about the unknown, and that is why you've seen markets around going down, and even with some of the commodities as well. I mean, the Obamacare, a lot of money has been invested into it. I mean, people are not sure if companies or people have invested in insurance and medical asset bonds and all those things. It means that they're going to go down. So I'll pull my money out of that. But I'm saying that where all these funds going to go will go mostly into gold assets. And if this trend lasts longer, that could be good news for our raw commodities that we export onto the international market. So it's a mixed situation now. You could be excited because of what has happened, but also what would be the long-term implication of this on the Ghanaian economy? It's all about uncertainty. Whether Trump will go ahead with most of the major economic programs of the Obama administration. If not, that is where the problem is.
But the problem also is the difficulty that people have for Donald Trump, based on the messages that he uttered during his campaign. He seemed to be a very polarizing figure. And so we see that the external markets seem to have reacted differently than the intra markets in the United States.
You're right on that one. You're right, and as I tried to explain earlier on, when people are not clear, because for most of these investors, they want to be able to look ahead for the next 1 year what will happen. And if it's clear that he might undo all the things, because again, when you look at the numbers, the U.S. economy is picking up. The job numbers and all those critical indicators that you want to look at is looking good. So if you have a new person who's going to manage that space and it's not clear what he's going to do, that is why you're seeing all these things happen. So that is where the concern is, because it's likely that he might do away with all these things. But again, when you listen to his acceptance speech, there's some interesting stuff for there, because he came across as more presidential. I'll be president for all and all those things. Is this the new Trump that we're going to see? Then maybe the markets might stabilize a little bit. Don't forget our Euro bonds are also trading on the international market as well. You see a president who had issues with the Federal Reserve. So are they going to go ahead and rather hike rates because they think that things are not stabilizing yet? You have a president who had problems with the Supreme Court judges. And in the U.S., the Supreme Court judges are everything. They can undo and do programs. So all these things are playing up to, I don't know what is going to happen. Therefore, I'll pull my money out of these markets. And that is why we are seeing these trends. But for Ghana, it's a mixed situation. Whilst it could be good for us because of the fact that when these funds are taken out of these markets, they end up in gold assets. And that will be the interesting bit for them. But is he going to press ahead with his policy of telling people who are not citizens in the U.S. to get out, who are not legal in the U.S. to get out? There are a lot of Ghanaians in the U.S. They remit money down to their relatives here in Ghana. So what is going to happen to that one? So there's another side of it, that remittances could also go down.
I see. We know the reactions on the continent and invariably the sub-region in Ghana economically, and we know what the reactions will be politically. We're just here to talk the economic market, but China is a big player. And we know that over the last 20-25 years, China has been making sure that it's racked up its reserves, especially in the markets, local domestic markets of the United States of America. What could be the repercussions in itself? Because we know that's also the reason why we have the Asian stocks and the markets, etc., tumbling in.
Again, on trade and economy, what has been the promise of Trump? Make America great again. His argument is that America is losing out to the other economies that are springing up. So they're going to take back their factories, they're going to take back their jobs and all those things. So it's more of he's getting onto a war path. Don't forget, America is a member of the WTO. as well as China. There are rules when it comes to these trade agreements. So you can't just go today and say that, do away with this, put taxes on this, put levies on this and all this. So it looks like he's prepared to fight the Chinese invasion in the U.S. market, even in the growth of the Chinese economy around the world. That, listen, it's the American interest first. If it's about jobs, I want to make sure that if you're also operating in my market, you give a large chunk of the job to Americans. You also ensure that Americans operate a large chunk of your companies and all those things. So it looks like you're really on the warpath when it comes to trade issues with China, because Trump, I mean, he won based on these promises. Some people are saying that, listen, oh, he was just saying these things because he wanted to get the votes. But it's a reality check here. You won these votes because you promised people out there that I'm going to do A, B, C. You can't go back on those promises. So he's supposed to live up to that expectation of ensuring that when it comes to trade, when it comes to the U.S. economy, they don't lose out to other economies like China. And therefore, they are going to fight them with all the policies to ensure that America becomes great again. That's what he's saying, because you're losing out in trade and everything. So there could be some serious fights there when it comes to getting the economic space in terms of trade or global trade. Don't forget, China is now commanding a significant share of that market. Trump believes that U.S. has to take that significant share of that market. There will be some issues springing or getting into the political side and all those things. So we are up for a real war when it comes to trade between the Chinese government and the American government as well. Okay. And all these uncertainties, again, are just not good for the global market and even down to Ghana, because most of these investors who are buying our bonds, I mean, are operating in U.S. And if their markets go down, they will also be revising their notes whether we should continue buying government bonds, investing in the Ghanaian economy. So there'll be some scaling back of funds that should have been coming to emerging markets and frontier markets like Ghana.
Well, somebody both George and I are familiar with is Dr. Godfred Bokking. He's the head of the finance department of the University of Ghana Business School. And thanks for joining me on the line. Now, particularly with Trump winning, what could be the economic repercussions outside the U.S. towards what the U.S. economic policies could be, particularly knowing that China now has, over the last 20 to 25 years, become the haven for which we have a lot more manufacturing of European and American product taking place in inland China, for which those materials would have to be exported back to those receptive countries.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. I think that Trump winning certainly has some global uncertainty, because I'm not too sure the world, as at now, is actually ready for Donald Trump. People may have their own way of calculating and ascertaining that uncertainty or whatever. So you could see that immediate shock is actually rippling through stock markets, currency markets globally, because just like the Brexit, it wasn't something that the world actually prepared for, and this is what has happened. So normally in the financial market, in any modeling, even if you do it by way of event studies, you realize that the immediate reaction will be, how do I readjust my portfolio, whether in currency-wise or stocks or other financial assets, and therefore you would immediately want to look out for where to hide within the immediate to the short term. So that is probably what is happening. I think broadly, the American system is structured in such a way that the way things are done will not change drastically. I'm not too sure that in the first 2 years or so, Trump would have enough flexibility to be able to re-engineer how things are actually done in the U.S. But certainly, a certain signaling effect is out there that U.S. wants to look within. U.S. wants to take control of its own economy. U.S. wants to compete and wants to advocate for respect through strength, respect through strong policies, and a kind of intention to say that we are not giving up, for which reason I want to believe that other countries would also be positioning themselves to respond to how U.S. policy prescriptions are anchored or accommodated. And I think that is where the issue would have to be managed quite clearly. Otherwise, there could be some kind of retaliation as well from other geo-economic powers in the world. But I think that for us in Africa, my little understanding of the Republicans is that they have usually favored Africa more than the Democrats. Here, forgive me if you find out that my hypothesis is not entirely correct. That's my understanding in terms of how Republican policy, prescription, or interventions have been in Africa, right from the abolition of slave trade, and then a number of other policy interventions that probably have inured to the rest of Africa. But I also do think that there's very little that I want to believe that the U.S. economy can do today because of where the maturity of their market and where the economy has gotten to, and the fact that there are inherent challenges in the U.S. today, for which reason Donald Trump would have to work hard within the first 2-3 years to be able to show Americans that, yes, you voted because you wanted to have control over your own economy. We are giving that control to you. We are focusing on creating jobs. Not just quality jobs. We are focusing on making sure that we rebuild the infrastructure and all of that. So these are quite enormous. And if you look at where the kind of physical space that they have, I want to believe that it's not going to be that easy. Beyond that, I also do expect that there will be greater collaboration, and I do expect that Donald Trump, after winning, will tone down and actually engage world leaders along the lines that will ease global uncertainty, because that level of uncertainty itself is not good. Whether you like it or not, you have to partner China, because there are American firms who are going to China today to do business. There are European firms who are moving capital here and there, mobility here and there. So for that reason, you cannot just close your doors and say that we want to be seen as an island. No, there's more that can be achieved through collaboration, through interdependentness and all of that. And I want to believe that this is not lost on Donald Trump. And see, American system is built on the fact that experts are available and they try to use their experts a lot. There's no single policy that America will come up with today if it hadn't been thought through with the right people, experts here and there, debated through the institutional structures that are actually established and all of that. So I want to believe that he will tone down. I want to believe that he will learn the game and trying to engage the world leaders. And beyond that, there is also the issue that being a world leader is not only about yourself. You must be seen to be taking keen interest in helping countries that actually deserve some help from the U.S. For that reason, America would want to do that. The rise of China hasn't been that favorable because China hasn't put forward morality along trade negotiations and all the way they do business, foreign direct investment, and all of that. So America must still show the way that you can still be strong and be fair to some extent in how you deal with especially a less powerful continent like Africa. Because if you look at the level of abuses that comes with the Chinese influence in Africa, I want to believe that it's something that even Africa itself, through AU, to take a keen interest in terms of the destruction to our environment in Africa as a result of the Chinese factor. I think it's becoming more. The disadvantages with that, I want to believe that it won't be long. It will actually outweigh whatever that China is doing for us by building for our Ministry of Foreign Affairs or whatever. Because the ecological deficit that we are running into today, feeding into climate change, because Africa suffers more from climate change today than any other continent, though Africa contributes very little to climate change itself.
Okay, but Dr. Wokpin, one thing we do know is that for all the governments of the United States of America, continuity of policies, etc., even if they don't want to continue until they mainstream or outstream it, it's something that they always do. I have here with me George Wiafe. He's our head of business, and we've been discussing a number of things about how we need to make sure that for a win that has shaken the world, created a lot of uncertainty and some apprehension. How do we get the government of the United States to continue that very dialogue, knowing that they have programs and institutional dialogues and technical assistant activities around the world, and so that needs to continue?
There wouldn't be a sudden exit from this program. It won't work that way.
Okay.
Because it will have implications for the U.S. economy itself. That is why I'm saying that. I mean, forget about many of the things that happened pre-election and all of that. I mean, when you are given the job, okay, the perspective you bring to bear may be slightly different. In fact, we all do know all the things that Obama said, I mean, in 2008 and all of that. Your ability to fulfill that would also depend on the kind of structures that are established. And you see, reforms take time. Reforms take time to actually have it pass through the system and all of that.
But ultimately, they get to be achieved if a new administration comes in and feels that our policy direction needs to change.
Yes, but you know something, that won't be that drastic in the immediate.
Yes, not in the immediate.
It will not be that immediate, and that is a fact. And you see, there's a learning process in here as well. For which reason we should probably calm down a bit. Yeah, there's some level of global uncertainty. Any economists in the U.S. today will certainly advise that we need to tone down. We need to be a bit cautious because at the end of the day, that uncertainty has implications for the U.S. economy itself. Because if you want to create jobs, you want to make America great again, the way to do it is through collaboration also. The way to do it is greater involvement. The way to do it is through peace. The way to do it is through some level of certainty across the board. And I want to believe that in the next couple of weeks or so, you see many of these things actually unfolding.
All right, just be on the line for me because I'll take you for two more questions, and George would have a take on some of the
I think that, Prof, I beg to differ with you on some of the issues. Obama couldn't move most of his programs ahead because he had a House and a Senate or a Congress that was, majority was the Republicans. And he complained about the fact that even when, he cracked a joke recently that even when I take the Republicans' policy and I take it back to the House, just because it's coming from Obama, it is thrown out. Now, don't forget, look at what is happening in UK right now. Now, these politicians have become so conscious that when they promise the electorate something, they want to deliver. Even in UK right now, there are still majority of people who are saying that, listen, this Brexit thing will cost our economy, so hold on, slow the process. Theresa May and the rest are saying that, listen, there is no turning back on Brexit because we promised the people X.
So your point is?
My point is that despite the concern that people are saying that, listen, Trump promised a lot of things, structures are there. This time, Trump has the majority of Republicans controlling all those House, the Senate, and the Congress. So he'll be able to push his policies ahead. Don't forget, he also got there because of a promise he made to certain people. We are losing now when it comes to the American economy. I'm going to do away with Obamacare. It's rubbish, it's blah, 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 and that. Don't forget, there are a lot of companies who have invested into this thing. These companies also bought into our bonds and all those things. What will happen to that? He will move his policies ahead because he has all the House in his
and his promise the electorate too.
And he has to deliver on these things.
Well,
so
great
the difference between Obama government and a Trump government is that I have the House, members are on my side, so I can push every policy that I want to push ahead. And I think that we are losing out to the Chinese government. I'm going to review all those trade agreements that was put out by Obama. He's going to have his way.
Okay. If you go to the Facebook site or page of JM, that is John Dramani Mahama, we should remember he's a flag bearer for the incumbent NDC for the 2016 elections. He's already congratulating the U.S. President-elect Donald J. Trump. But Dr. Bokpin, for leaders like John Dramani Mahama and the rest now reaching out immediately to Donald Trump and his camp, it means that they want to make sure that that very alignment in policy is there. So it makes a lot of sense to say that they want to make sure the political arena is in the right shape.
Good friend. You see, pre-election comments were not favorable for Trump, even from some world leaders. But now that he has won, you want to work with him. That's the difference. You want to work with him. Donald Trump would have to work with world leaders. He cannot get his agenda completely through isolation. That won't work. And I do agree with George. that the dynamics are not the same in terms of the control of Senate and all of that. But we want to believe that even within Republicans, I'm not too sure that all of them do agree with some of the hard stance that Donald Trump himself has taken. I think that even within the party, there will have to be some kind of consensus. And I also want to believe that, yes, there are certain things that will have to be reviewed. And at the end of the day, you don't want to do it much to the annoyance of the world because of the retaliatory effect that could also come on the U.S. So, George, you have a point, and it's good that we disagree. But my point is that now that he has won, I want to believe that the way to carry through many of the things he talked about, even the strategy to get it done, may not be probably like the way he talked about it before and all of that. So, I mean, you could do the same thing, but find another way of doing it that ensures greater involvement, that ensures that there's some level of certainty in the global economy and all of that. So, I mean, look at the comment that people pass about Trump here and there. Even in this country, I heard I think the vice presidential kind of one talking about Trump violence or something. I mean, now he's the president. You want to learn to work with him constructively and all of that. I want to believe that all leaders will begin to also realign and seek to accommodate, because now you don't have a choice. This is the person that has been elected, and therefore we have to learn to work together, because if there's global peace, it's good for everybody else. Because the dividend that comes from global peace may not be shared equally. But if you get a little bit of the share, it's so far better than having to deal with uncertainty, because we are also contributing to fuel that level of uncertainty. I mean, if you look at, you see, we also have to understand that the factors that influence people's vote may go beyond just GDP or economic growth. They may be looking at other things, like what played out in the Brexit. People did their forecasting and all of that based on economic strength, but people wanted greater control of the economy. They want the economy back. So there are other indicators that may not necessarily suggest that it's all about GDP, it's all about growth and all of that. But at the end of the day, a balanced view is to be prepared. And I want to believe that we have to be able to offer him that benefit of the doubt that, yes, now that he's the president, he will tone. I want to believe that the speech he gave just after winning, was a bit different from how he was speaking pre-election and all of that. So these are things, because you have his advisors, and all of that. So because the Republicans are looking beyond just Donald Trump's term, they are looking at also being relevant. They are looking at also making sure that the Republican Party remains the people's preferred party for the next foreseeable future, even beyond Donald Trump.
Right. Thank you very much. And Dr. Godfrey Bokpin with the University of Ghana Business School speaking to us on his own perspective about how we are going to see perhaps mainstreaming of policies, just doing the transition from the Obama administration into the next Trump administration. We're likely to see from December to, that's December this year, to 2020, when we have the next voting taking place for the United States of America. But if you do analysis and you read the best literature, you watch the best coverage from the United States of America, particularly during this electioneering, George, you go to the Midlands, you go to the East Coast, the West Coast, factories are there, plants are there, assembling places are there, they're not working, they're stagnant, etc. He wants to make sure he takes those jobs that are taken from the United States to China and the rest of Asia back to the United States. You know, how does he do it?
Well, it's about the tax breaks that he promised,
yes,
because the concern was that the U.S. government, the Obama administration, was taxing these wealthy businessmen too much. And you saw what was happening to Apple. They're relocating their headquarters to other countries and all those things. So because the Democrats or the Obamas believe that rather let's tax the rich to help the whole social system rather than giving them tax breaks. So that was a major reason why the Apples and the rest were relocated to other countries in terms of headquartered in the different countries. If Trump is promising that I'm going to lower these taxes, that could be a major motivating factor for these firms to come back to U.S. And the Republicans are often, they are pro, getting a very good tax system for people out there, businesses out there. So it's likely that some of these factories that went down or relocated to China, they're going to come back because the Republicans are promising that we'll give you the tax breaks because they work with the philosophy that don't tax the businesses too much. Rather, give them tax breaks, give them intense incentives. And when they do very well, they will go out there and employ more people. So if you know the Republicans, they are good at extending these breaks to these multinationals. And it looks like that will be a big motivating factor to let these companies come back and stay in the U.S. And let's see where he talks about making America great again would really happen or not. But the tax issue is a real big concern for most of these American firms. And let's see what will happen if that will really be a motivating factor to let them come back to the U.S.
I'll be joined by Malik Dabo, and he'll be talking to us from the perspective of the politics of the times and what the relationship of the Donald Trump government would be with the rest of the world and what could also be the implications for the continent of Africa and the rest. But we're taking a break. When we come back, that perspective from Malik. Malik Dabo has joined us, and Malik, thanks for making time for us, passing through this very discussion. Yeah. But the perspective we have to look at it is about the geopolitical setup of the world and all the utterances and the rhetorics of Trump and how that could also play out in terms of in the minds of the skeptics, whether, you know, he could press just a button and a nuclear target will go off or not, which we know is very unrealistic in the current time. Yeah. What do you make of it?
Well, I think that we will see a different Trump. We will see the candidate Trump and the president Trump will be entirely different, and precisely because the world and America is a system. So he comes in as an outsider. He had a message that was appealing to the American people. As George was saying, the American people felt that they are losing that tag which they have as they are the greatest country in the world, and to some extent they are the greatest people in the world. They are the most innovative people in terms of science and maths and all of that, and creativity. So Americans have this nostalgia of being the greatest country. Trump told them, we are losing it, let's get back to being great again. That message was bought by the voters. As to whether he would translate that into governance, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening because if you just listen to his own victory speech, you heard a much more calmer, somber Trump, who is more conciliatory. He said to the rest of the world, we will put America first, but it doesn't mean that we will not work with you. This is a conciliatory tone. This is something you would not have heard Trump say during the campaign. In fact, it was a crusade for him. I think we will have some change. The change will not be drastic. I don't see him building that wall between America and Mexico. I don't see him blocking Muslims and Arabs from entering the United States. All of those extremist views that he expressed, I don't see him carrying them through because he recognizes that being a candidate and being president are two different things. And if he tries to stop the things that he says he wants to stop, he will create chaos. How are you going to say...
Do you think he's very conscious of that?
I think he knows.
I bet to
and the speech he delivered, and all of us were watching it, tells me that
he sounded presidential, and George indeed acknowledged that.
He will try very hard.
I mean, I think yes, he's trying. That is the new Trump that we are all expecting him to live up to. But again, if you should follow development in Brexit, and you see the harsh stance of these politicians who are leading the exit, you promise the electorate certain things, and that's why they vote.
And they will expect you to fulfill them.
When you even watch some of the networks in the U.S., and when they're even speaking to the Hispanics and all those people, they are concerned that if those people from Mexico come in, they're the ones who are fueling these drug issues and rape and all. They felt that they're even more protected under a Trump government. So they voted on you based on these issues. You can't...
And they will expect you to deliver.
You can't go back on those words because I want to. If they wanted the status quo to maintain, they would have voted Hillary. They want a new world order. Look at Europe. And the next change I'm looking up to is in France. Le Pen. Let's watch her.
Or Germany.
Yes, let's watch those markets. People are fed up with the establishment. That we are
So
not
you're saying
feeling
that
the impact.
Le Pen could be the next?
Could be the next taking over.
Very much a socialist
So-
inclined person.
So I bet you, listen, he has to live up to those promises he made.
But you see, if you're talking about socialist inclined, the Americans have moved away because they.
Well, no, we do
believe
understand.
that Obama was
They
trying
particularly
to
don't believe.
socialism.
They particularly don't believe in a social ideology, but they believe that the states and the people they vote into office need to do a lot more for them,
Absolutely.
for their people,
Look, we will not have-
for their health sector,
we will have-
for creating a lot more jobs. For their industries, etc. And that has been the bane of the argument here. We have many jobs that have been taken away because of the huge tax non-incentives that are available for or not available for American corporations, and so entrepreneurs and manufacturing firms found it a lot more prudent to put American tax on products manufactured elsewhere in Asia.
We will have a Trump who is unconventional.
And he wants to bring those jobs back.
So it is going to happen. I
It
mean,
will not
Malik,
happen.
it would happen.
Look,
He's controlling all the two houses that matters
I agree
in
with-
taking
I agree
those
with
laws.
you. I agree
He
that-
will have his way.
I agree that the Republicans control the Senate, they control the House of Representatives. That means that they have total control. And I was listening to the BBC. It's been a long time since you have one party controlling everything, both Congress and the executive. That's what he has. I'm saying that how is Trump going to tell the American business person who believes that if you take your company to China, you benefit from lower taxes, you benefit from the lower rates that you pay in terms of wages for workers, the engineer who will do your work and take $8,000 a week or a month, you can get a comparatively better engineer in China who will take half that price and give you the best job. How is Trump going to tell the American
Convince
business people
Yeah.
that, look, bring back your companies and produce for
No, but
America?
the
It will not
Republicans have
happen.
always been pro-business, and don't take that away from them. They believe that empower the private firm, and they would have money and employ more people. So that's the
But
philosophy.
under the Republicans,
and coming from a Trump,
under
who
the
is a
Republican period,
businessman,
within the two terms of
Yeah.
George Bush, we saw a lot more of the migration or the
they are pro-business. So as for empowering the businessman to be in US, you will see that he's a businessman. He's building.
But he cuts corners, and that's exactly what they did with
Well,
the policy. They cut corners and decided to go to
Precisely.
China, and that's the current
The
state in
same
which we are.
business ideas that influence his own decisions as a businessman will influence decisions of other businessmen
Yes,
as well.
yes.
As president, if Trump didn't do that as businessman, how is he now going to expect other business people to do that
But
when
Malik,
he's president?
let's be realistic.
It will not happen. He will not be a conventional president, I agree. Can he bring the drastic changes that he's promising? I doubt that he can do that. He will bring some change. He can't bring a drastic change because the system itself will not permit him to do that.
But George, for example, we have WTO, we have the other sections of the world order. You have trade agreements, you have great agreements with countries, not only in the SAMP region, but also elsewhere on the continent, especially emerging continents like Africa and Asia. You can't just do what you like.
I would want to just base my argument on certain developments in the world now. Let's take even example, look at this issue with China and then the other countries in Asia fighting over their territories. International court ruled that China, you were wrong, retreat. When a country believes that they are strong economically,
South China Sea.
when I think I'm strong economically and politically, forget about those institutions. Look at the posture of China with respect to all these international institutions that have actually ruled against it. Look at Russia. So when a country
Because they're
believes
big
that
players
I'm a
in
strong
the
player
world.
politically and economically, I don't care what the institutions are going to say.
Because they know
I
that
am
when they cough, it would affect the rest
and
of the world.
There's a new order again where all these countries are now seeing that the so-called globalization didn't work for us. That is why UK is retreating. That is why Russia is retreating. That is why US also is going to say that the globalization, the so-called globalization hasn't worked for us.
Well, let's see.
Therefore, it is time to look internally
George, I get
and
your
build
point.
a strong economy.
George
George,
is
I agree.
George is a skeptic, and
I agree to some
you are the
extent with George
realist.
that he may try to find his way around the institutions because we have seen America do it again and again. In the case of America going to Iraq, we know that the United Nations Security Council was against
but they went ahead
in Iraq. We know that Hans Blix, who was the chief weapons inspector of the UN, we know that Mohammed El-Baradei, all of them pointed out that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but the Bush administration was bent on going to Iraq, and it called the bluff of the United Nations. Kofi Annan was UN Secretary General at the time, and he went to Iraq. We know what the consequences are. I think that America remembers that sometimes when it goes against these institutions, the consequences are dire, and the Iraq examples is there for everyone to see, even Trump himself. At one point, he supported the Iraq war. At another point during this campaign, he was against it because he recognizes that sometimes when the institutions take a decision and you go against it, when the consequences are, the rest of the world will look at you. Because of that, I do not see a Trump president who would want to, at almost all the time, be at loggerheads with world institutions. And just listen to what he said. We will work with you. We will put America first. But we will not leave you alone. We will stand with you when it matters most. I think that you will have a Trump who is unconventional, as I said in the past, but you will not have a Trump who wants to turn the world upside down as he has done in this campaign.
I hope that you look at development in Russia again, and I would still want to base my argument, development in Russia, development in China, and even current development in the UK, when there were all the projections
in terms of the push of the countries themselves.
Now these world powers are now taking entrenched positions, even if it goes against the established norms and practices.
But when you use Brexit,
okay, gentlemen, just hold it for a minute. I have to speak to Kuku Aban. He's in Takoradi because it's where we are going to have the Petroleum Commission 2016 Local Content Conference and exhibition. Well, we have to look at that later. But if we have to look at the current state in which we have, then it means that governments on the continent need to be ready for whatever.
You're right on that one. And I would want to look at, still on the economy side. What has been the track record of the democratic government that when they come? It's about the economy. Things are picking up. The job reports are showing good. Growth is good. What do we see when we have a Republican person in there? Their record on the economy hasn't been that good. So that is where my problem is, irrespective of whether he changes the status quo or he does the same thing. We could see another war again.
Isn't therein lies the quandary, isn't it, George? You have a Democratic Party in power, a Democratic government, and the figures are looking pretty. And yes, you have the Republican with an unconventional candidate who has won elections against an established candidate like Clinton.
And half of the country, or more than half of the country, want him.
Both popular and electoral college votes. He's won all of it. Remember also that they control both houses. And they lost both houses in Obama's first time midterm elections. They lost the Senate. At that time, they were controlling the House of Representatives. They lost the Senate. And then the next election, they lost both houses. In this election, they are still retaining everything. They have won the executive elections as well, the presidency, I mean. So if all of these figures look pretty, as you point out, and you are a figures person because you are a business editor, why is it that the American people believe that they can bang their hopes on the Republicans?
No, Malik, even in Ghana here, there are times when some will say that inflation here, BD. There are people out there, despite the fact that, there's always a difference between issues happen at the macro level and it trickling down. Yes, of course, the jobs are picking up, but how widespread are those job growth numbers are? So there is still in America about the fact that inflation here, BD. If the numbers are indeed picking up, there are still people out there who think that we are still not great than America, even though the numbers are good.
So
in terms of security,
it's patriotism over all the related other economic issues.
Your numbers will be good, but do I feel more?
And they needed somebody just to stand up for it, and they got somebody like him.
He did.
And am I safe as an American today?
And you are saying they are going to pay for it.
They are going to pay for it.
How?
They are going to pay for it.
How?
Let's look at how the
This is what is going to happen.
Ahead.
We have Kuku Aban in Takoradi, the Western Regional Capital, because it is where we are going to have the Petroleum Commission's 2016 Local Content Conference and Exhibition, officially supported by SME Development Partners Ghana Supply Chain Development Program, Praxia Global and USAID, and having media partners, Joy Business and other sponsors. And this is going to take place today and tomorrow. And this year's event is themed, well, increasing in-country value and capabilities of domestic businesses. And this looks at Ghanaian companies seeking to play significant roles within Ghana's own emerging upstream petroleum sector. Well, over the next 2 days, the event will also travel through Ghana's oil and gas local content story, from the now repealed Exploration and Production Law, the PNDC Law 8.4, as well as through passage of local content regulations in 2013, as the year it was passed, its enforcement and how we can have a way forward for it. Well, Kuku Aban is already online, and if he's ready, we would want to get some perspective from him, what this whole exhibition and conference is about, how we are going to get the story told about local content in the upstream sector of our petroleum industry. Kuku Aban, over to you.
Yeah, Ray, so the conference is gradually taking shape. As you can see behind me, we are at the hall, and registration is already underway. But prior to all the registration, you know, the discussion has been going on in respect of what's happening in the United States of America. Most of the participants are out there in the foyer having a conversation about it, saying that the United States of America citizens may have voted because of security based on what's happening around their country right now. So that's what's happening at the moment. But very, very soon, that's about
Well, we just lost the feed there, but we'll get Kuku Aban back online, make sure that we bring you the best sight and sound and in-depth analysis of what that very local content exhibition will be about for the upstream petroleum sector. And then also get to have a more perspective analysis done by the various participants and industry players there. But Kuku Aban is joining us back on the line. But Kuku, and from where you left off, these participants there, are they only from the sector and the industry, so to speak?
Roland, most of them are in the mainstream. That's the upstream sector of the oil and gas. And we have some also from the financial sector. Actually, it's the HFC Bank that is spearheading, actually sponsoring as well. And because the Petroleum Commission wants the financial sector also to come in and sponsor, they're saying there are a range of activities in the oil and gas sector that they can also play or partake in the upstream sector. So it's going to be a stock taking, not only among those, if you like, key players, talking about those who engage in oil rigging and those who engage in transport sector, but the entire value chain. So the financial sector particularly, they want them to also get involved and sponsor, or if you like, give financial support to some of these SMEs, because all the processes that are ongoing in respect of participation, local content and all that, they want the SMEs to take or play a very key role in them. So it's across the value chain, Roland.
Well, so we'll be back with you again, Kuku Aban, and then you can give us a lot more perspective on this. But we should also inform you that this very conference and exhibition will be live on this very channel, and so you can have a better perspective about what industry players think. And then you also have an insight into what the exhibition will be all about the upstream petroleum sector of Ghana. But we have to conclude on this, the way forward for us. We need to take the man as he is, Donald Trump. It's who the citizens of the United States of America have decided to elect. And we need to be a lot more serious about it. We just have to take it in. But what should we be taking to bed, so to speak, for the rest of the day, knowing that we have a man like Donald Trump occupying the seat?
Well, for me, and again, for the economy and those who are in the business space, it's all about uncertainty, just like what we've seen on the market. And we are hopeful that his acceptance speech would send some signals across the market that, okay, I'll be a new president. And because of the fact that there's impact of what is happening on the market for the Ghanaian economy and even for you and I and all those things. So we're expecting that we see a changed Trump as the president of the United States of America.
Politically.
Well, Roland, I think that that's, as you say, that's what the Americans have given us. My friend George and others can huff and puff all we want. The Americans have chosen who they believe is the best person to move their country forward. I believe that he will not deviate to the extreme because the system will rein him in.
Well, thank you very much. Malik Dabu joining me from our political desk, and also our business news editor here, head of our business desk, George Riafi. George, obey you. Well, that's where we say we're coming to a close on our package for the morning. We started a great package from 11:30 a day before. That's on Tuesday. Transition throughout the early hours of today, and then continued with the AM show. And we hope that you've enjoyed it. Now we have to call it a morning.